Hey everybody, Dave here with another Pathfinder rule reminder for you, and this one deals with a spell called Personal Blizzard, which is a 3rd level focus spell, is a Witch's Hex, and it's one of the newer spells found in the Advanced Player's Guide, and how this spell interacts with rules like sustaining spells and persistent damage. So, Personal Blizzard is a spell that, when you cast it on a target, that target needs to roll a Fortitude save, and if they fail that Fortitude save, then they suffer 1d6 cold damage, and they also suffer 1d6 persistent cold damage. It also has a duration of sustain, and so what that means is, after it is cast, the person casting it every round can spend one of their actions to continue it for one more round. Now, persistent damage is damage that occurs every round. It's not a one and done damage. It's you've been set on fire, or you've been you've had acid thrown on you, or someone's cut you deeply and you have an open bleeding wound. These are situations where you continue to suffer damage round after round until you do something to deal with whatever has imposed this condition upon you. So in the case of Personal Blizzard, this person's going to be suffering 1d6 cold damage every round as persistent damage. Now, at the end of those turns, those targets can make a DC 15 flat check, and this is true of all persistent damage. When you're suffering from a persistent damage effect, at the end of your turns, you roll a DC 15 flat check, and if you get a natural 15 or higher on the die, then your persistent damaging effect has gone away, or you've had some way have dealt with it that you're no longer being affected by it. Now, the big difference between Personal Blizzard and other persistent damaging effects is Personal Blizzard specifically says that the persistent damage ends when the spell ends. So if you choose not to sustain it, then not only does the spell ends, but the persistent damage also ends. And if the target who is suffering from this persistent damage succeeds on one of their DC 15 flat checks, the persistent damage goes away, but the spell effect can continue without that persistent damaging effect up to a minute, as long as you continue to spend one of your actions to sustain it. So there are two ways that this persistent damage is going to end, as opposed to the usual one method. And that kind of raises the question of what really is the value of a Personal Blizzard spell if it's relatively easy to get rid of the persistent damage. Why would we continue to sustain it if the persistent damage has already ended? And the answer to that is the spell does more than just damage. It also imposes a concealment on that target, and all targets are concealed to that target as well. So if you hit somebody with this and they fail their Fortitude save, then anytime they try to attack anybody, they're going to have to overcome concealment in order to hit them and deal damage. Now, the downside is they're wrapped up in a little Personal Blizzard, and you have trouble seeing them too, so anytime you try to attack them, you also have to overcome concealment. This was never intended to be a damage dealing spell. This is intended as a hex, as a curse, as a way to debilitate and debuff one of your opponents. And that's the value of it. So I would say don't fixate on the persistent damage to begin with. But that's how Personal Blizzard works. Bottom line is yes, your opponents get to roll DC 15 flat checks to remove persistent conditions just like you do, and yes, if you choose not to sustain it, then it ends, and so does the persistent damaging effect, even if they haven't succeeded on their DC 15 flat checks. As always, I'm going to leave in the comments and in the description links to a couple of videos I have that go deeper into the topics of sustaining spells and persistent damage. And as always, I want to invite you all to leave in the comments any topics you think would be a good suit for these rule reminder videos. Again, this topic came up a couple of times in the comments, so I always appreciate it when you send me those. And as always, I want to thank everybody who supports me, my patrons on Patreon, those who like these videos, those who subscribe to my channel. Again, thank you very much. I really appreciate all the support from the community. And with that, I'd like to say thank you very much for watching. Take care and happy gaming.